And what we're going to do is show you what our results were from all that work that we did this year. And it gave us a whole lot better appreciation for this stink bug, but at the same time, I'm not scared of the big bad red band as I used to be. I'll just say that. I think we can manage it. I think it's a doable deal. We still got a whole lot to learn, but that's something that we can do. You've all seen the damage. Angus showed good pictures of that. This is a field in Lincoln County, Arkansas that the grower decided not to spray. And that's what it looks like when you don't take care of business. So we immediately got busy in Arkansas and we started looking at threshold studies, and this is a study that both Angus had here in Mississippi and I think Don Cook had one too besides us, but we're looking at 7 treatments initiated at R3, and we're looking at different levels of red band from 4, 6, 9, 12, 16 per 25 in an untreated check. Now what I want to show you is the difference in 2 locations. I want to concentrate on that because Angus had constant high pressure. On the other hand, our pressure wasn't as great, and as you can see, when you look at this, the sprays that we did, we sprayed weekly for 7 weeks. Angus sprayed 10, and you can see the red bar there as you go across how many times he had to spray to keep them to spray at that threshold. And you can see for us, we had about 2 sprays is about all we had to accomplish, while he averaged more like 5 or 6 to maintain those thresholds in each location. And this is what our damage looked like in Arkansas. So the untreated check, or the weekly sprayed, had right around 2 or 3%, and it went up from there as you went across from 4 stink bugs per 25 sweeps up to 12 and 16, and we're bumping around 20% damage. And the untreated check, you can see, is right there at about 20% damaged seed. In Mississippi is quite a different story. When you got out to that 16 in the untreated, they're running well over 90% damage. So you can see quite a bit of difference on those numbers associated with the damage between the 2 locations, depending on how bad your stink bug population is at that time. When we looked at yield, we had a pretty straight line across there, and you're not seeing any significant differences based on number of applications or threshold. However, in Mississippi, where the pressure was more intense, you can see that even at the 16 per 25, they didn't put a combine in those plots. There was nothing left in the untreated check. And you can see the weekly sprayed cut about 32, 33 bushels down to about, about 15, 18 bushels in the 12 per 25. So it just, the take-home point on this is it just depends on how bad the pressure is in those plots and in that field on how much damage and yield that you're going to take. This is just a shot of Angus's different treatments in that test, and you can see that weekly sprayed, the beans are done. And this is the same thing that we saw later on in some of our fields. We were having trouble getting to maturity, but you can see as you go across there the range in maturity at the end of the season, where the weekly spray, where he controlled stink bugs very well, down to about 16 per 25, the beans are still green and still growing, and the check's the same way. We also did some cage studies where we looked at different thresholds. And I'm like, if I'm initiating a stink bug trial at R7, that's me standing in the middle of a field at R7 beans, R8 beans, and I'm disgusted for having to be there. I think it's ridiculous, I mean, that's the way I was raised. Once those beans are done, they're done. Well, we were told different, and so we got out there and we were sampling beans that are in that situation, and you feel like a dang fool. You really do. Amen, right? Okay. So what we did was we put some cages out there, and we put different threshold levels out. We had a 2X threshold, which, you know, would be about 8, and then 16, and then 32 in a cage, in a 6x6 cage. And we started that infestation at R7 or R8, and we left the stink bugs out there till harvest. And I can tell you, when we took the cages off at the end of the year to cut them, there were stink bugs running all over the ground. I mean, they were very healthy. That's one thing about these stink bugs. You know, a lot of stink bugs, like a green or a brown, you put them in a cage, and the next day you walk out there and they'll be tummy up with their legs sticking up in the air. With these red bands, they're very hardy, and they can last. And so we went out there and infested at R7, and you can see our yields. Nothing significant. We didn't see any differences in our plots, whether it was untreated up to 32 stink bugs in a cage. We had no difference in yield associated with that. This is Angus's data, and he looked at a little different numbers. He had 0, 12, 24, and 48 per cage, and you can see the yield, no significant difference. And this is what's given us confidence on that threshold that Angus shared with you just a minute ago. We feel like, you know, based on that we can push it a little bit and raise that threshold on red bands at R7 and R8 and be comfortable that we're not costing the grower any yield or quality at that time. Now, when we look at damage in that situation, you can see a pretty good response, and we're seeing some increase in damaged beans. And I'm talking like the picture that you see there, that's the kind of damage that we're looking at that stage, because if you'll remember, the bean is made by that time. You got a full-size bean in the pod pretty much at R7, and you're done. So this is the kind of damage that you're going to associate when you have stink bugs out there at R7 or R8. So you can see when we went up from 0 to 8 and 16, and then another jump at 32 stink bugs, we increased our damage to about 20% at that 32 stink bugs in a 6x6 cage. This is R8, again, where we infested at R8, and you can see pretty much a flat response. No significant difference between those yields there. Pretty much the same thing. We did see a little blip in the data on damage, stink bug damage at R8. And I think that's because that situation where you got, you know, you put a 6x6 cage out there, and you're gonna have one green plant out there. It seems like almost every time. And those stink bugs all of them are gonna go to that one green bean out there. And if you happen to pick it up in your sample, when you take your samples, you're gonna come up with a higher number than what you would normally see. But I can say, based on what we're seeing here, we're not getting a whole lot of damage at R8. And I'll be danged if I'm gonna sweep any more R8 beans. All right, so let's talk about efficacy a little bit, because I think that's the key to it when we get into this situation, is looking at control. And I want to throw one of Angus's slides up there first, and this is looking at several different products at 3, 7, and 11 days after application, and you're looking at the number of stink bugs on the y-axis there. So you're looking at in the untreated check, he bounced around from about 10 or 11 up to about 14 per 25 sweeps. And you can see the products there. Skyrater, that's a pyrethroid plus imidacloprid. You got orthene at 3/4 pound, cobalt, a couple of rates, 3 rates, and then orthene plus bifenthrin, and that's the products of choice that we recommended this year to most of our growers, based on the work that we had done in previous years, where we just got enough out there to do some tests in 16. And then back in like 2012, when we had a little blip of them back in that time. But you can see most of the products are keeping the threshold, keeping the red bands below that threshold of 4 per 25 on out. But certainly orthene bifenthrin looks really good. Now, I can tell you, based on my work, a single shot of Admire Pro in my test didn't look this good. It looks pretty good there, but I mean, it got about 40% control. But in my trials, it actually looked more like the untreated check than anything. And I think it's not significantly different than the untreated check here. Here's one of my trials that I did. We got a lake population up in Marianna, Arkansas, and I just happened to have some late planted beans that I wandered into and found we were running about 40 red bands on 25 sweeps. And you can see the products that I got a couple of rates of bifenthrin there for those folks that feel like the need to cut the rate. I got bifenthrin imidacloprid. I got lambda cyhalothrin there, silencer, indigo, acephate at 1 pound, leverage, which is baythroid and imidacloprid, bifenthrin belay, and bifenthrin plus acephate, which I consider to be the standard. And you can see the control there. None of the products, by the way, if you look at that and you look at a threshold of 4 per 25, none of those products on that first application reduce the level of stink bugs below the threshold. So we didn't get good control. We got fairly decent control compared to the check, I guess. But when you look at all those products and you look at that level, and just a word to the wise, if you go into a situation where you got these kind of numbers, it may take 2 applications to clean this bad boy up. They are just not as susceptible to our insecticides as greens and browns and that kind of stuff. So these are the kind of numbers that you need to be forewarned about as you go into it. If you walk into a field with this kind of level, you're not going to get control even with the best treatments there. This is 11 days after application. Now look how many red bands I got in my untreated check. So I've gone in a period of from just a few days after treatment. Now I'm at 11 days, and my population in that untreated check has gone to a little over 120. That's how fast these red bands can explode on you. And then you can see the treatment there, that low rate of bifenthrin not doing too good. A lot of products not doing very well there, as you can see. And again, at 11 days, my population, even in my best treatments, are around 30 per 25 sweeps. Not very good. So I made another shot. I came in and my red bands are now at 70. And one of the things that I noticed on this pest is they move around a lot. And they're looking, and they'll move around in the plots where there's not any, a bunch of nymphs. They'll go lay eggs in those plots where you don't have nymphs. If you clean your nymphs out, they'll move into those spots really quickly. And it's amazing how they do that, how they can find those spots where you've got control and then you lost control because of it, because the adults all head into those plots and lay their eggs. So you can see across here, we've got some numbers now where with 2 shots, we got control with acephate, bifenthrin, belay bifenthrin. That's a really good treatment. I don't know if the folks at Valent can get the price of belay down where we need it to be, but certainly that product has a lot of potential for control. And then the acephate belay. But what you see there, and this is what we kept hammering as we went through the season, was tank mix, tank mix, tank mix. Always better than single product applications. And that's kind of what you see here when you look at this data. Your tank mix treatments are much better than single product applications just almost every time in every test. And I'm just showing you one test. I probably got about 12 or 15 trials out, and they all show this same trend. And that's why I pulled this one test out, is because it best shows this situation where tank mixes always, and I got a lot of people that want to put a pound of acephate out. or they want to put a hot rate of bifenthrin and walk away from it, or another single product. And every time when we put these tests out, we always get better control with the tank mix over a single product application. And this is the total. This is 10 days after the second application, and you can see the numbers are back up in the untreated check and all the way down. But again, you look at the products at the bottom of those bars, the best treatments are going to be those products that have something in combination. You don't see it so much from this picture, but the plots that we got pretty good control, but not the best control. There's actual color gradation in the plots based on how good your control was and how far along that plant had developed. So we got in that test and we started looking at the plants inside those plots, and we started seeing a bunch of blanks out there. So this is something that we felt like we needed to chase down, because this was a plot that had red band at R5. So they came in it really early. They got in it and started causing problems. And we started looking at we cut a sample out of each plot and looked at the blank pods. And we actually saw a big difference in the number of blank pods compared to the treatments that were working. We picked one that was so-so and one that was really good. We didn't see a lot of difference, but you can see the increase in the number of blank pods where you let those stink bugs go. And this is looking at the damage. We had about 80% damage in the untreated check and down to about 10 to 15% in the bifenthrin belay. So we got a good separation on those treatments, looking at stink bug damaged seed there. So you can see the differences. What I'd tell you, based on the work that we've done this year, high populations are going to equal some definite yield and quality loss. You have to be really reactive to these things and jump on them when you see them. And I think R5 for us is the key. If they get in there at R4, maybe it's R4, but definitely R5 is when that 4 per 25 really pays for itself. I'm not a big proponent for spraying 4 per 25 normally, but in this case, I think that's probably the way we need to go for now as we develop our threshold. But certainly we're seeing this delayed maturity, which has some serious connotations for our growers that we need to avoid at all costs. But certainly R5 is the time, if you get close to treatment level, you don't play with them. You get them out, get them out. We saw no yield loss observed at R7, R8 with these stink bugs. We'll continue to be doing this work. The only thing is that you need to be concerned about is taking stink bugs to the elevator. We had a lot of loads that were rejected at the elevator because there was too many stink bugs in the truck. So that was a problem for us. It looks like the dual mode of actions are the most effective, and we still have a lot to learn. You see that lower picture there, that's a Bovaria. That's a fungus that gets in these stink bugs. We saw it late this year, it's the first time. And you can see that top picture, like Angus mentioned, we started picking up red bands in some late planted sorghum. We were shocked, surprised. That's not a population that just happened to fall in there. You see all levels of nymphs in there and adults too. There's all kinds of egg masses in that. So they do feed on more than legumes like we were originally told. So we still got a long way to go on these things. We got a lot to learn.